Hi, everyone. Fran here. Come with me as we take a journey 16,000 kilometers across Asia and Europe with Jenn Baljko. She is the author of the book, The In-Between, Journeying from Fear to Courage. She talks not only about her book, but about what she learned about herself in the process. I hope you stay with us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopenning. This is the place where hope is happening. And I'm so excited that today I get to interview a special guest who has done amazing things. Wait till you find out about Jenn Baljko, who is coming to us from Catalonia, Spain.
Hi, everyone. And thank you, Fran. What a great opportunity to be here. Thank you so much.
I just find it so interesting to talk to my guests from the other side of the world.
Oh, you found me on the other side of the world. It's also equally fascinating to me, by the way. So, thank you for finding me.
Well, you're welcome. And we're going to talk about your book throughout this interview today, but there's just so much more that we can talk about other than the 16,000 kilometers you walked, which took you 3.5 years.
Wow. Yeah, take a breath after saying that. I'm tired already remembering it.
It wasn't yesterday, it was a few years ago, but
Yeah.
you've had a chance to really do some deep thinking about that walk and wrote a book called The In Between, Journeying
Mhm.
from Fear to Courage.
Mhm.
You also wrote a different book with another group of ladies,
Mhm.
and we'll talk about all of that and all the things that you've been doing in the meantime. But let's talk first. God, I'd love to ask this to my guests. If I were to ask your closest high school friend at that time what you were like in high school, Jan, what would your closest high school friend have said about you in high school?
Fran, I've been listening to you and I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I'm going to surprise myself because I didn't want to have an answer for it because I was thinking of myself in high school and I think I was goofy. I was pretty goofy. But I was studious and I have a lifelong quality of learning. So I was a serious student and I loved studying and I was really goofy. Like my one of my closest friends, not my closest friend, but her father he calls me grasshopper. Like even till this day, he doesn't remember me so much as Jenn. And I'm 53 now, so this is like 40 years, 38 years ago or something. But I did a play in high school, and I dressed up like a grasshopper, and he remembers me as the grasshopper from that play. So I was goofy and I had a lot of fun. Like I was really into fun and making the best of all of the moments, I think. But I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey in the 80s, and it was a rough place. So we had to be tough. Also, we didn't, have time to be afraid of anything. So I think I have this idea that I was fearless and brave and silly. And we used to walk down the streets with our Walkmans, and we would all have the same tape that we made from like the top 10 Casey Kasem, like whatever. And we would all hit the play button at the same time and walk through Jersey City singing as we were walking down the street with our Walkmans. Like, and I'm like, wow, that was actually really brilliant that we did that. Like, we didn't care what people really thought of us. I used to die. One of my friends was really like, she was really cool and she did like cool stuff with her clothes. And my coolest thing was I bleached my jeans and I was walking around with white spots all over my jeans. And my mom's like, oh, what are you doing? I said, at least I didn't come home with my hair blue. And she's like, all right, bleached jeans are the trade-off. But yeah, I think I would like to think that they would say that I was fun and studious and serious all at the same time.
Being fun and studious and serious. There's a little bit there still. uh,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't know you well, but I have read your book, and
Thank you.
you're welcome. And so I would say that just, okay, I'm going to read the quote that starts the book.
It's
And
always fun when somebody reads backwards from your own book. It's
right?
fun. It's fun for me to hear it said a different way in a different
Okay,
voice.
I'll use your voice. Uh, Hi, love. One day in life, before we're old and broken, let's go for a long, long walk. Wouldn't it be cool to walk from Barcelona to Bangkok or vice versa, for instance? Although Berlin to Barcelona would be easier and shorter. Jenn. And who were you writing to, Jenn?
That was the note the email that I sent one June afternoon to Luis, my love, right before he was going out for lunch from work. He'll tell the rest of the story of like he undoes his tie a little bit and like reads the words again and like, and his response is, "It's a long, long way." So you get an email that says, "Let's walk." At the moment, it was the initial proposal was from Barcelona to Bangkok. We did flip that, and we walked from Bangkok to Barcelona because it's more fun to walk home where people can meet you instead of walking into a city where nobody would would know that you just walked 2 continents. But I don't know who gets an email like that and then says, "Well, that's a long way." Like, who even says something like that? So it was a very fun, it was a very, and his email back to me the next day was, before we're old and broken, why don't we do a long, long walk like Buenos Aires to San Francisco? Because I lived in San Francisco for a while. And I'm like, that's a long way. So who does these things? We do. We did, apparently. But it's nice hearing that letter in your way because it was quite a, and it wasn't a thought out email. It was an idea had floated in a series of ways like ideas do, and it came to me that way. It just, I heard it that way, like before you're old and broken, go do a long, long walk. And it was mine to hear. Like it was mine to hear and it was mine to do. I am just super surprised that this love of my life had also decided it was his thing to do as well, which, he could have said that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. And no, we're not walking 2 continents, but no, it was pretty much a yes from the beginning.
It's beautiful that it was a yes. I mean, he threw out a suggestion to go from, on
Yeah.
this side of the world rather than on that side of the world. You had been living in Spain for a short
Mm.
time. The book talks about that from the beginning, that this facade of fearlessness
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
just something. Okay, yeah, you did walk down the street with the Sony Walkman in your ears and you're like doing, I think about the warriors, right? Like the
Yeah.
warriors walking through, like you would be just like that in my little girl mind. But you had already taken a leap of faith, really, and moved all the way from where you were in America to Spain. So what was that? What was that first act of fearlessness, I guess it would have been?
Yeah, it was, well, and that came out of a divorce, really, actually. And very coincidentally, it was my Eat, Pray, Love moment as Elizabeth Gilbert was going through her Eat, Pray, Love moment. And when I returned from a trip, somebody said, "Oh my God, did you read this new book? It's just like your story." And I'm like, she beat me to it. But it was one of those, I had gotten divorced from a college love. We got married and then it didn't work out. So we had met in college. We were together for a long time. In my early 30s, we split. And I kind of felt like I had 2 options. I could eat ice cream every night and feel sorry for myself, or I could actually create something that I really wanted in life, which was to travel solo. I had been doing a lot of career stuff up until that point and hadn't really gifted myself a lot of travel. So sort of on a whim, I decided, and it wasn't a whim, it was like, well, now's my chance. I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to put everything in storage, and I'm going to go travel Europe for 6 months. And I used that time to study Croatian language. My dad's of Croatian heritage. I hadn't really learned the language, so I went and did an immersive language study in Zagreb for a while. Went to Greece and Italy and then Spain, and I met Luis during that trip in the middle of a square in Barcelona during a festival. And I went back to San Francisco at the time. He stayed here. And then like we had this long distance thing kind of going on. And then I came back in that was 2005. And he said, do you want to move here? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, we're not even a real thing, are we? And we were a real thing. And I called him from a payphone on a street in San Francisco because I couldn't reach him another way. We didn't really have cell phones at the time. We didn't really have all this this technology that we had. So I had to call him at the office, and I called him and I said, all right, I'm going to send all my stuff, make some room in the closet, and we'll start a life together. But before we do that, I'm going to go to Croatia and pick some olives first, and then I'll come back and then we'll start, whatever this is going to be. So that's how it was, just a leap of faith. But it was also coming back to San Francisco after the divorce and after I had gifted all this travel to myself. It didn't feel like I could be there anymore. Like, I don't know, something like life was pulling me in a different direction. And I'm like, well, the worst thing that could happen is it won't work out and I'll just come back. The safety plan is always, well, if it doesn't work out, I could go back. And you never really go back. So, but there is that safety net feeling of, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll just make another choice. But this was also in my 30s when I was feeling I think I was feeling very brave in my 30s and 40s. And it's curious because in my 50s, I feel like I have new fears that I didn't know before so much. But yeah, I think it was just that knowing that I was probably going to have a life somewhere else, and trusting that I knew that it could work out. And if it didn't, I still had inner resources to pull myself out of it.
At the beginning of the book, you talk
Mhm.
about your dad
Mhm.
sending you off on this first trip, recently divorced, and you're going to be gone overseas for months and months.
Yeah,
But your dad, I thought about this a bit. What was your dad's occupation, Jenn?
he was a police officer. Yeah.
So, being a police officer, I mean, he faced fear every day.
Yeah.
And probably he would have been your age in his 30s
Yeah.
and been a police officer in his 30s,
Yes, for sure he was.
right? And going to face fear every day with courage. Let's let's show first. I'm going to
So let's
show it.
throw them now.
I'm going to show the map so we can talk a little bit and you can explain it about why you chose this route. So let's do this.
So as you're pulling up the screen, I'll just mention we're going to look at this map that is spread across Asia and Europe, and it marks. It's a hand-drawn map. Luis drew this and drew the line across it, and it crosses everywhere from Thailand to Catalonia to Spain to where we walked. And there's a few places that are unmarked on the map because we weren't able to go to places like Pakistan and Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. But there's generally a long line across there's a long line across this part of the world, across Asia and Europe. So
Jenn, I'm looking at the map now, and those of you that are watching on the vlog can also see the map. You went through some pretty fabulous places.
We did.
You started in Thailand, in Bangkok.
We did.
And the book talks about Thailand in 2 different chapters, but not India. If we're doing Eat, Pray, and Love here, Jenn.
I know. We have a documentary that goes along with this, and in that I talk about India quite a bit because I had a hysterectomy in India, actually. We had a very amazing woman who helped us in India. So I think it was sort of like, here's the like the documentary and the book are companions to a more complete story. But it's funny. I probably cut a couple chapters. I'm sure I had a draft chapter about India.
Let's talk a little bit about why you chose the countries you chose.
The route sort of planned itself. Like once we knew, we started in Bangkok because we knew it would be too hard to be in China, right? So it was sort of a logistics practical thing. Like to get a visa for China to walk across China would have been really challenging. And I don't know if we would have been able to get that much time. Like we would have needed multiple visas to probably stay in China. And some of the border crossings with China and other places is a little bit more complicated. So Thailand was very familiar to us. We had been to Thailand before. And even though Bangkok is a really huge mammoth city, it took like all day to just walk out of Bangkok. Like we were barely finishing the day and we were still in Bangkok and we had walked already 20 something kilometers. But Thailand was an easy place to start because it's set up for tourism in a lot of places and they're friendly people, generally. And we knew that we could find food and water pretty easily. We knew that we knew we wouldn't have many visa problems getting there. So Thailand, once we decided that Thailand was the starting point, because we had to start somewhere, and it also became alliteration of Bangkok, Barcelona, BA. It became, and that's how we refer to the trip. We refer to it as Baba. That's our nickname for it. But once we knew that, then what ended up happening and what was appealing about this route is that we knew we could do it by land. It's 2 continents that are together. And there's a massive landmass that people have been walking across for all of human history. And we did not know very much about Central Asia. So that was really fascinating to us to walk on old Silk Road, Caravanistan kind of places with, images of all the great explorers of the world, moving through those routes over history, over all of centuries in time. And we were also fascinated by the idea that we would have no common language to speak. And how could we possibly communicate with all these humans we were going to meet without a common language? And what we ended up doing is making little cards that are sort of universal symbols for water and food and doctors. And could we pitch the tent somewhere? Most people know the basic image. So we had a little picture book that we walked around with. And then we would learn some language along the way and enough, or we would find a young person. Usually young people now speak some amount of English in some places, but we didn't rely on English as we didn't think we would have English as a common language. So so it was curious because in former Soviet countries, with just enough Croatian, I made up Russian. So we got through a lot of conversations by just having similar Slavic words that we could interchange. And then by the time we got to like Italy and France, Louis speaks I studied French, Louis speaks French, but in Italy, we were just making up Italian words based on Catalan and Spanish. And then we just kind of managed through, but the route presented itself as fascinating because we wouldn't be able to rely on a common language, and we would get to see all these places that have connected many, many other places throughout all of time. So that's how it kind of came to be.
And you think about how you talk about the Slavic language really did go a huge distance, right? So if you know a few words in Croatian, that will take you through some of these others that were also part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at one time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And, you know, like the how people moved in between borders and all of that. Like
yeah.
it's fascinating actually, because you start the book and it doesn't start
No,
with it doesn't start with it
no,
starts with Iran. So
yeah.
why did you start the book with Iran?
Well, and it's funny because I start with a particular phrase of Iranian and Persian language that's, and I'm sorry if any Persian is listening to this and I say it wrongly, but it's something along the lines of kahaste nabashid, and it means power to your elbow, which basically translates to don't be tired. And the Iranians, we knew coming into Iran that we were going to have an amazing experience there, because cyclists that we met going eastbound into, on the Silk Roads and going towards China told us, wait till you get there. Like, these people are so open-hearted, and they are like the masters of hospitality. And the amount of invitations we got all along the way of, come in for tea, and tea is never just tea, it's always something else. And people getting off buses and saying, thank you for coming to our country, and thank you for visiting us, because the politics and the people are not the same, as anybody who travels knows that to be true. But that phrase we heard so many times in so many ways, and it carried so much of the rest of the trip forward, because you do get really tired. And every time I heard power to your elbow, I'm like, I need power to my feet. My elbow doesn't need anything right now. My elbow is the least of my problems. But then because the Iranians don't, they don't get a lot of good news coming. People don't hear a lot of good news about Iranians, but if you have neighbors who have come from there and you are lucky enough to have them in your life, you know how generous and warm-hearted they are. And we feel so lucky to have been able to be there. And the book was going to be called Power to Your Elbow. Like, that was in the earliest drafts of the book, that was the name. And as the story evolved and it wasn't becoming just a rehash of the book, it was becoming a deeper story with these different kinds of emotional stepping stones, the name had to evolve as well. But I'm like, no, this has to still be the beginning, because like so much of the rest of the walk was shaped by the experience we had in Iran. And starting the book at the beginning didn't feel like in the journey through a spiral path, it didn't feel like the beginning point. It wasn't, we walked linear across countries in a certain order. And we did hopscotch, actually. We did have to change some orders of some countries, but it was mostly a straight line linear path. But in life, it doesn't really show up that way. And the memories of it don't come to me linearly. They come to me as little flashes from all over the places we've walked. And Persian culture is so rich. It is like, it may not be the it may not be the starting point of all of humanity and history, but it holds stories of a lot of humanity. And the region of Persia, like we were just talking about the language, like the Persian language, we first started hearing pieces of Persian in Tajikistan. And those words that we learned in Tajikistan carried us into Iran. And the same with Turkish. Turkish rooted languages, like in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, they're Turkish based. So the things that we learned in those areas, we were able to bring back into Turkey. But when you start seeing like the breadth of land that all of they're colonial powers, but how much richness they've spread across the world. I don't know. You have to start a book somewhere. I guess that's the shortest answer.
I
Somewhere.
guess it kind of goes back to what we were just saying. about these empires that,
Mhm,
like you said, had spread such a large ways. And the Turkish Empire really did that as well. It had
mhm,
gone into all areas until the power shifts, political party power shifts,
mhm.
and we've got another new power, we've got another, and we've got another. And so the world itself doesn't stand still with politics and with religions and all of the rest of that. I mean, we've just like under our feet, the magma doesn't stand still. The people here, the people on the planet are never stagnant.
Never.
Actually, you've got this brilliant quote about that, and it's something that you see on your wall every day. Uh,
Mhm.
those that don't move don't feel the chains.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
actually, that's a quote that you see right outside your building, right?
yeah. Well, it's in Barcelona, and it does give me pause whenever we see it, because it's the truth. Like, if you don't move, you don't feel the chains. Like, and you don't know what you're chained to. And you have to, and it speaks to a lot of things for me, right? Like, you have to get out of your comfort zone, because you do become enslaved to your routines, right? It's easy to fall into this rhythm of things, but then when you tug that a little bit, it's like, wow, what am I really holding on to, or what's holding me back? And it speaks to, like, this facade of fearlessness that I seem to have embodied for a lot of my life, is that I never wanted to be chained to anything. And then you start realizing you actually are. Like, I was chained to an idea of security and financial stability, and um yes, I wanted adventure and love and a new unfamiliar place, but I also, yeah, I wanted stability. Right? And what we do out of the need for stability and safety can be a chain, because then maybe you don't throw yourself across the world and find something new. Maybe you don't break that rhythm or habit, or try something because you're afraid of what it's going to lead to, right? So, but that saying that, like, well, if we don't do it now, then when are we going to do it? Because we were also cheating ourselves. Luis is an only son. For instance, I had already made the move. My family's in New Jersey or in New York or in Florida, most of them. I had already moved to California. I had already moved abroad. Luis is the only son, and his parents are aging. And there was a moment in time of, like, maybe we're not going to do this trip until they pass away. And I'm like, they're super healthy people. They could live to be 90 or 100. Like, that's 30 years, right? Like, then we're not going to do it. If we're going to wait for your parents to pass away, then we're going to be old and broken, like, we're going to not be able to do it. And we had to move through that a lot. It's like, okay, you're and we did come back during the winter breaks when we weren't sure where else to go. We came back, and that was really awesome, because then we got to be all together. They got the burst of love that they needed. We got the burst of love that we needed, and then we could go back out and continue the trip. So it wasn't a continuous journey. There were pauses like that. So, but that was something we had to talk about. Like, that's a chain that we're wearing, then that's a chain that we've given ourselves, and how will we move that so that we could do this? Like, if this was truly ours to do and we don't follow that, then maybe there's a cascade of other opportunities that we lose because of that, right? And yeah.
Well, it makes me think, like
Yeah.
when we talk about, we get too comfortable and then we forget what else there might be. It makes me think of what happened when you and Louise were in Turkey,
Oh yeah, in Turkey.
when you started to question the
Yeah.
the, the root,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
what happened with you and Louise in
Well,
Turkey?
we had a split. We split for a while. And I believe that he was becoming too enslaved to a route that basically he invented. I invented it along with him. but I had a much looser idea of how we were going to walk in the world. And even we talked about it endlessly, but until you're in the middle of it and you don't really know what and by Turkey, we had walked together a long time. We had walked most of Asia, but we had taken a winter break, and I didn't want to return to the same part of the route and just keep doing 30 kilometers a day. I wanted to Turkey was a place that I had high on my list of places to visit. I wanted to spend more time there. We knew we could renew our visas pretty easily. So we were like, why don't we go to the south? And there's like really beautiful routes that I had learned about. There's the Lycian Trail and the Carrion Ways. And we could walk these routes that the Turkish Cultural Society had set up. And I wanted to like experience a different part of Turkey. And he's like, no, we have a route and we're doing this route. And I said, no, we're not doing this route. And we had a big blow up. We had a couple of those kind of big moments of like, why are we doing this? And do we have to still do this together? And is the trip the same if we don't do it together, right? Like there was a lot of introspective moments, but I say they were arguments. Let me just call it what they were, arguments, and very emotionally flared arguments, because he was very mission oriented and we're going to finish it and we're going to keep going. And I was like, no, we were going to volunteer. We're going to stop along the way. We were going to like do all these things. So there was a natural moment where I said, okay, when you go back, we go back to Turkey, we'll go back to Istanbul. We had taken a winter break. We were in Barcelona. We returned to Istanbul. And he wanted to pick up the route where we had left off a few months earlier. And I said, I'm going to go to the south of Turkey. So we took 2 different planes in 2 different directions, and we agreed that we were going to meet in Çanakkale at the end of Turkey and continue on. So he did his thing of walking many more kilometers than he probably should have every day. He hurt his feet a lot. He had very bad blisters and hurt himself very badly. I got to the south of Turkey. I worked for a little while, and then I stopped. I did a yoga festival. I rode bicycles, like random towns. I had befriended new people, and they invited me into their home. Aisha, like one of the women that I met there, she's like, why don't you come to the yoga festival? And I'm like, okay. And then I met a group of Russians, and they took me under their wing for a while, and I ended up volunteering at I volunteered with an older couple who had an orange grove. So I picked oranges and watched their chickens like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And then I visited a couple other places, and I was like, oh, I didn't really walk. So, in all honesty, the 16,000 kilometer walk is more his 16,000 kilometers, and I probably did 15,000, because that moment in Turkey, I really needed that moment in Turkey, because I felt like we were also not being true to the spirit of the walk in some ways, where it wasn't just about a race to get home. It was really about creating more spaciousness to experience what we were meant to experience, where we were walking and carrying the light of the people we had met with us forward to the places that we were standing in, and then gathering more of that, and like the last mile of electricity that gets wheeled out to the villages, like we were bringing that with us forward. And it wasn't just only about putting feet on the ground, but it was taking time to hear people's stories and giving ourselves the time to just enjoy whatever came that day. So Turkey was that point for us where, are we loyal to the mission, or are we loyal to the spirit of the trip? And then we got back in Europe, and it was hard to get back because we had established different rhythms at that point, and it took us some time to kind of get back into this flow of being together as a couple. And for me, I thought it was a breaking point in the trip, where we had said from the beginning that this trip would not break us, that our love was going to be stronger than this trip. And there was a real concern that, is the trip breaking, or are we breaking? And what are we loyal to here? Like, is the trip more important than who we are together? And in the end, we're still together now all this time, and our love did survive that. But it was a point of like, what do you really want from this, and what do I really want from this? And if we don't meet in the middle and find this together, could we separate and come back? And we managed. It wasn't easy, but we did do it. With a lot of, there's like a little bit of a forced oh God, I gotta walk with this guy again like this. And he's like, I gotta walk with this woman again who like just came from the yoga festival. It was we had to learn how to do that together again, and be that couple who was doing this trip together. But we often, when we present, like, I'll just mention this because people ask, like, what was the hardest thing about the trip? And they expect us to say, like, oh, all the things that people expect us to say. And we basically look at each other and just point at each other, because we were each other's hardest thing to deal with on the trip, because you're always at a limit. You're always at a break point of something, comfort or hunger or frustration, or like, I want to do it this way and you want to do it this. There's always a compromise and a negotiation. So that's where we kind of, so Turkey was a funny moment in our trip for sure. You're picking all the interesting stories, Fran.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because he's a complete separate human being too, with
Yes.
his own fears, right? His own fears and his own insecurities. You talk a lot in the book about fear versus insecurity, and how you really, a human needs time to process that. Am what I experiencing fear, or am what I am experiencing is insecurity? So maybe
Yeah.
Jenn, just touch on that a little bit,
Yeah.
because in the book, it made me wonder, does every situation need courage? Because does courage belong to fear? Is it a flip of the coin, right? Are you either fearful or are you courageous? Or sometimes can we be in the in between,
Yeah.
which how, because it's not like the digital thermometer, right? I mean, the digital thermometer can be like, room temperature, and then you put it in the hot turkey, and suddenly the digital thermometer is two totally different things in the blink of an eye. But from fear to courage, there's a whole spiral in there.
There is, and I'm surprised that it came to me this way. And it's because I never thought about it that way. I grew up in a world where you were fearful, or you were fearless, or you were courageous, or you were cowardice. And there wasn't much room in this. And of course, I grew up with, my father was a police officer and he taught us how to be brave. And we grew up in the 80s in a city that needed you to be brave. Like, but I don't remember, and there was no room for, like, there was no crying, like, put your big girl panties on and move on. Like, there's no time for all of this. And then moving into these spaces where I'm in women's circles and I'm hearing people talk about their fears, and fear gets thrown around a lot. Like, wow, the way it's being talked about, it's like, how does anything get done in the world if we're all holding all this fear? And it was sort of a novel to me that there was all this fear in the world. All this, and of course I had fear, but because I wasn't taught how to process it, I could only see it as, yeah, just put your big girl panties on and carry on. Or how do you really process? And the word insecurity kind of came up because I was talking to Luis's mom about something, and she said, oh yeah, that's not a fear, that's an insecurity. And she said something like that, and she didn't even go to college, but she's so wise in so many different ways. And that had me really think, like, are we just calling everything a fear? Or is that just like a lack of confidence? Or you don't know how to move yourself through a new situation, so you say you're afraid of it? Like, what fear is actually like your body responding to something that's a life-threatening situation. The fear of missing out is not a fear. it's you thinking that you're not going to have enough if you don't go click that new thing, right? life-threatening to you, the fear of missing out. And I have a fear of failure. And I'm like, is this a fear? Is this like a real fear, like life-threatening danger for me? No, it's my lack of confidence that makes me think that I am going to fail. Like, and if I fail, so what? Like, I'm not going to probably, in the things that I'm doing, I might not die doing that. If I fail, I'm just going to get back up and I'm going to do something different, right? Like so the emotional journey that came from this and the spiral path that you're talking about is that I started to do some emotional wellness and emotional intelligence work and like emotional resilience. I started to come into these spaces where this was being talked about, like around 2023 and 2024. And I'm like, what if you just, and I remembered a travel writer, editor, Don George, at one point was talking about storytelling a long time ago, and something you carry with you. You know, you just hear things and you carry it with you. And he had explained when you're telling like an essay or telling a story, you want to be able to stretch out the accordion of that. Like there's an accordion, and sometimes to get the right notes, you have to, this is the short section, this is the longer section, and this is the short section. And I started to play with this idea of the fear and the courage. And like, what if you stretch that out? And then it didn't come linear, like it didn't come as a straight line to me. It came in this concept. The spiral has become like my new favorite shape, and it's all kind of looping on itself. And then you go around a curve and there's something else. So that's, if fear is an input, that's how this spiral path started to come. Like, okay, if fear is an input that your body's responding to, maybe you have to walk yourself to courage. And that's how it started to come to me, was like, there's a whole lot of other emotions that come before courage comes. There's sadness, maybe you have to make maybe there's anger and resentment and frustration because you have to make a new choice. Something you loved is changed and you're afraid that it's going to be lost forever. And you have to deal with that. And then maybe there's inspiration and delight and like, oh my God, there's this new thing coming and I'm so excited about it. And maybe there's worry and anxiousness and then maybe there's gratitude, like, wow, I get to have this new choice in my life or this new pivot, or maybe it's not fear. Maybe it's like really well timed for me. And then I think you kind of walk yourself into a heart of courage now. And then with that courage, you kind of walk back out into the world and say, all right, there's all these other emotions on the way too. And then inevitably another fear or insecurity will come. And you got to walk yourself back into, find a little bit more courage. And then you come back out and you greet the world again with something else. And that's how, I don't know how it came really like that, but that's how I begin to really play with fear and courage.
You know, that's beautiful because I want to show it for those
Mhm.
of our viewers that are actually viewing, and you can talk a little bit about
Yeah,
it.
I'll talk about it.
So I will share my screen again. So,
Great. Yep.
all right. So can you just explain for the people that are listening
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Well, what it is, it kind of resembles a labyrinth. And I'm going to give my friend Jessica Stokes here a little bit of a hat tip, because around the time I was writing this, I was on a retreat in Vermont, and we had walked a few labyrinths. And then I had just come off in 2023 doing a collaborative anthology with called Fierce Awakenings, and this was calling in courage and confidence to walk life's spiral path. So the spiral and the labyrinth kind of came together in this image that's on screen, but basically it's fear as an input, and you kind of walk yourself into like this labyrinth spiral path that gets to the center. And like, if you've ever walked labyrinths, it's meant to be a meditative journey to the heart of the labyrinth. And that image and that feeling of walking the labyrinth, like each step has a different meaning, and then you see a different perspective from each turn. So that's what that is. And then you walk into this heart of courage, and then you can't really stay in the cave of that, right? Like I was kind of seeing that as like, you can't just go in the cave and never be part of society. If you have the courage, you have to bring it back out to the world. So there's just a different journey on the outbound side with different emotions that are layered in.
You start with fear and then you go to
Yeah,
anxiety, worry, frustration,
that's it.
anger. resentment, disgust, shame,
Disgust.
grief. Crazy. Like you've got a lot of the words, but they really have uh, a degree of, right? There's a
Yeah,
degree of what we would start
that's it.
or calling fear as you go all the way around. And it just by degrees, it's not the digital thermometer. It's like your old thermometer with the red bulb on the bottom as you watch it change all the way around until you end up at courage. And then when
Yeah.
you leave the labyrinth, it goes back out again. Curiosity, enthusiasm, hopefulness,
Hopefulness. Yeah.
mindfulness, until you're back out again into fear. So I,
Yeah.
I just think it's brilliant.
And just like the reflection of this is like when I was doing some I was helping people write books for a while in life. And there's this, there's like the hero's journey and the heroine's journey. And I was kind of mapping that, right? Like you go out into the world, like you might come in with right anxiety, worry, frustration. But when you're kind of in this other space, like, yeah, there's going to be grief. And then there's going to have to be like fortitude is such a good word to me, like, because it's strength in a different way. Like it's an endurance of strength is fortitude to me. And then you go to like ambition, like, yeah, I can do it. I'm gonna do this. And then there's like a whole journey. And then when you have that courage and you've made the choice, like there is enthusiasm. And then there's like gratitude and playfulness and like confidence comes out. But then inevitably, like you're gonna be disappointed, right? Like if you've climbed enough mountains in your life, like personal and professional, you get to the top of the mountain and then you've maybe scanned the next horizon that you're going to go chase and the gold star you're going to chase next. And it's sort of like that dream job that you work so hard for, you get it. And then like another boss is hired and it's not so fun anymore. Or it's like you've reached the ceiling that you can't climb there anymore and you have to get on and make another choice, right? Like, oh, but if I leave this job, am I going to get what I want? And it's all of that that gets bundled up. And we never really talk about it. We never talk about the moment that you come off that mountain and there's a disappointment or a rejection. You just put on your big girl panties and you carry on. And I started to realize, like, wow, a lot of the choices I had made came because something turned a corner that I didn't really acknowledge, and I had to make a new choice, like going through a divorce. Like I didn't see that really coming, and then it happened, and then I was like, do I eat ice cream or do I pack my bags and go travel? Like those were the two choices I came up with. There could have been 50 other choices if I had been wise enough to sit down and say that, right? But yeah, the better choice was to go travel. Right. But it came out of sadness and it came out of disappointment and it came out of, wow, my marriage is wrecked. Like, what am I going to do now? We were supposed to be together forever, like, and I think a lot of people can, but then like what you are doing in Hopenning, Fran, it's this, there's always this spark of hope that's somewhere, right? And that becomes like an enthusiasm or there's a spark of, oh, I can get through this. Something else is going to move here. This is not going to last forever. There's this spark of hope becomes in it, and I'm probably sure that like hope is not even on this wheel. There's wonder and awe and joy, but it's funny how I skipped right over hope on that as like a core emotion that you would feel like that turns the wheel of your life a lot of times.
When I think about this wheel, this labyrinth, because
Mm-hmm.
you go in and
Yeah,
then you come back out, but it's not the same route.
it's
You
not the
come
same.
back out on a different path. But
That's
this
right.
could also be multidimensional because courage is in the center. But it could be
Yeah,
multidimensional because courage might evolve again into something that leads to joy, like such
right,
extreme joy. And then what does joy lead to? Like,
right.
I mean, we might not even have the words in English.
Yeah. We don't, and now we're so fortunate to be in a time when we can speak to intelligence of like emotions and emotional wellness and emotional resilience. But Brene Brown says, like, we don't really have the language for it, and we need to develop the language and the nuance of these things. Like, joy is different than wonder, but it might feel the same when you kind of feel it, like great curiosity could bring great joy. It's like, oh my God, I'm going on an adventure to like discover this new thing. And there's just a lot of nuance and texture to it. But it has me wondering now, like, what's right underneath courage? Like, what is the spark of courage? Like, maybe it is hope.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it's just like the hope that there's another possibility and another choice that can be made. Like, and maybe it's a very dim little flame in your heart somewhere, but like, maybe it is hope that lights up courage. It has me really thinking about this now a lot of like, what obvious thing did I miss in the writing of that?
There's so much we could talk about, like going through Bosnia and Herzegovina and what came up there, and your experiences right at the French and Catalonian borders when you're almost home, and all that, just that feeling that you are, you're home. You're not home yet, but it's within days of walking distance. There's so much we could talk about. I think that we're coming close to the end of our time, though.
Too bad.
I know. But you have another book there on the shelf behind you. I think we need to spend some little bit of time talking about Fierce Awakenings too.
Yeah, it's a really special book, actually. I'm really super proud of it. Like, there are things that you do in your life that you look back on and you go, wow, I don't know how that all came together and why, but I'm so glad I said yes to it. And along with the walk, which I think is my most, the thing I'm most proud of having completed, it was this book. And I'll just show it again. It's Fierce Awakenings, Calling and Courage and Confidence to Walk Life's Spiral Path. And I called in 11 other women, and actually some of the women there found other women who became the co-authors of the book. And for me, it was just creating this space where other women could tell their stories. And many of them were not writers before. They had been told. One of my co-authors in that book, she was 70 at the time, and as a young child she was told, don't ever think that you're going to be a writer because you make so many grammatical mistakes, like your writing is terrible. And for her, and she always wanted to be a writer, and some teacher told her a long time ago that she couldn't do that, and she had put that dream on hold forever because somebody told her as a child that she couldn't do it. So the moment that she held her book and saw her name on it, it's like the happiest moment for me too, right? Because she believed in herself enough through the spaces we co-created, essentially, so that she could write a story and share it. And a few of Wendy Peterman has gone on to write several books this year. She's published a few others, and a few others have books in different draft forms and moving on. And they really believe now that they have a story worth sharing and telling. And it's because of the spaces that we created for that. And I think, Fran, this too, like when you bring people into these spaces, and if you could create that place where people can express themselves and find something important and valuable to share, you give one person a spark, and it creates this massive other thing that happens in the world that is counted or uncounted. Like, I'll never know, because Ellison wrote her story and stood up and said her story. I don't know how many other people will be touched by that. And me saying it right now, like, just because somebody told you something when you were 7 doesn't mean it has to be true until you're 70. Like, that, we put a lot of we stake a lot of our lives on like what other people say and think about us. So this book was about kind of breaking that pattern for some of the women that were involved in that story, telling and owning their own story and saying, oh, I believe that about myself. And I don't know, it's one of my most, like, I guess my most professionally proud endeavor for that. So thank you for giving me the space to talk a little bit about that
Oh,
too.
I'm grateful for that too, because you also have a workshop that you're offering for free.
I do. I do. And that's you can find that at if you go to alwaysonmyway.com and then go to the book section, the in-between book, but the full URL is alwaysonmyway.com /the-in-between-book. But if you kind of scroll down, there's a free mini masterclass that you don't even have to buy the book for that. It's just you sign up and you get the class. And it's about unlocking your inner strength, and it's a simple way for you to gauge a little bit of your own emotions around something that might feel fearful and something that might feel neutral and something that might feel a little bit more courageous or upbeat. So it just gives you like a little dip in to like kind of playing with these emotions, because sometimes they're big emotions to deal with, like fear is a big emotion to deal with, but it gives you a little dip in.
And do you do workshops in person
I do.
near Barcelona, Catalonia, where you are there in Spain?
I do. I'm actually doing a series of workshops right now, both in person and online on Zoom. And I like this idea of making menopause a rite of passage where we can embrace our creative superpowers again as women, perimenopausal and postmenopausal. And this like liminal space between when you're going through menopause and when you're like becoming the wise woman apprentice, not quite the crone yet. And I'm learning that's a whole journey on its own. But it's called Right Through the Pause, and I'm combining some mindful writing and voice finding practices and some intuitive movement practices to help women reclaim and embody this superpower that, it's not just about the hot flashes. It's really like your brain being rewired so that you can come more into your power. So both of those are happening in Barcelona and online. That's actually being held through. I'm doing the ticketing on that on eventbrite.com, but there's a 20% discount on that. So I'll give you that link, and if you want to add that to the description, we'd love to have some of your Hopenning folks in there and hanging out with us.
Yes, I would love to do it too.
Virtual or if you're coming to Barcelona, let me know. We got a little guest house for everybody.
Yes.
We're doing some in-person events here as well now, which is all new to me in some ways. Like, it's nice to have a space to do it in. And we were really close to the vineyards. Recently, I was leading a group of women on a slow walking, mindful writing, conscious connecting little journey through our vineyards. And it was really it's just really powerful when women come together and have meaningful conversations with each other. And it was nice to see how that unfolded for them, just by slowing down the footsteps that we take sometimes.
Beautiful. And so, Jenn, what is your last message of hope for our viewers?
Last message of hope. I actually hope it's the first message of hope is, and I think I'll just say the way I said it before is, let hope light up your courage. When you're feeling really lost or alone, find the glimmer of hope and let that lead you in and out of the labyrinth, into your heart of courage, back out into the world. Let hope be the thing that you look at fear in a new way with, let hope be the quality that you see fear differently with.
Beautiful. And so I will put all your links and everything in the show notes. What is your website again?
Oh, alwaysonmyway.com. That's the easiest website to find. Yeah.
And if we go to alwaysonmyway.com, we'll be able to find the workshops, the books.
The books for sure. The workshops I am doing differently this time, but also those links are in the show notes for sure. But the alwaysonmyway.com, you'll see books, and then you'll see The In-Between and Fierce Awakenings in both of those. And both of those books have little gifts for you to find if you scroll down on the page for those. And then, yeah, it's funny, the workshops, I kind of spontaneously created it, and I didn't go back to the website on, because I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to do it on Eventbrite because it's in person and virtual. I'll just do it. It's on Eventbrite at the moment. It's a new experiment. That's why.
That's you, eh? That's who you are. A little bit goofy, but studious and, serious in some ways.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jenn. It's been so delightful having
Thank
you
you,
on.
Fran.
You inspire me in so many ways.
Thank you, Fran, for creating this really beautiful opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone for joining us, whether you were on the vlog or whether you're listening on the podcast. Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe. It helps me to get the word of hope out. It'll help Jenn as well to get her hope out in such a different way than I do, but still so relevant. Please subscribe and make a comment as well, because I'm sure that Jenn and myself, we both love to hear how people think. Thank you, Jenn. I will see you in Barcelona someday.
Yes, come.
You take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
This podcast and Inspired Healing Hypnotherapy do not provide medical advice. The information included here is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained, and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this site.